Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another LinkedIn Live event. We're going to be talking about testing, failing, learning, and growing. And we're doing that right now at the House of Bricks. And yes, I was just doing a live event an hour ago, but we like to move quickly here and get things done. And we're making progress and building incredible things every day, brick by brick. And I'm going to talk to you today about our test, fail, learn, grow framework. And our guest today is a really important part of the House of Bricks. He makes all of this production happen. He's been with our team for a little over a year, but I'm not here to talk to you about his role at the House of Bricks because he was doing something I think even more impactful at the time, and what those things he was doing. He learned a lot in that process, and it has really helped us in this community. And I want to welcome Paul Riedner to the House of Bricks. So I want to tell you a little about him first. Was a deep sea diver serving in Iraq. He's launched a nonprofit advocating for trauma therapy access. And Paul has consistently pushed boundaries. And as the founder of Shadow Culture, he's explored the unseen forces shaping leadership and human behavior. So, Paul, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up, Adam?
I think I talk to you too often, so now we've got to remember that this is a live event that people want to listen to, and we're going to dive right in. No pun intended, even though you were a rescue diver, and that was just a terrible joke, but we'll start off. So let's talk about Shadow Culture. What you were doing, who you were serving, and what was your vision?
Yeah, well, that started when I was helping launch a nonprofit in Minnesota called the Veteran Resilience Project. And I was fresh out of the military, fresh out of business school. I had been working in a couple startups. So I volunteered to take the executive director position. And I was learning everything about trauma therapy, about what is the problem with veterans coming back into civilian life, and all the different tentacles of that. And what I learned is that there were a lot of myths about veterans, a lot of stereotypes that were wrong, some that were just plain just gross almost. And so the more I learned about myself and what I was struggling to come to terms with after serving in the military and in Iraq and that area of the world, I took all that, and I didn't want to just leave that with the nonprofit. So I decided to start Shadow Culture, and the idea was to train workplaces that have hiring initiatives where, hey, we want veterans to be hired in our organization, but I wanted to create something for the workplace to be able to access the talent that veterans have. We have a different culture. We have a different way of speaking. We have different expectations of our teammates. And so what I found was that there was a big divide between civilian culture and warrior culture, or military culture. And so the idea of Shadow Culture was to provide training to those that were hiring veterans so that we could get more out of the collaboration and fewer turnover and better outcomes.
And I heard something this morning. I was talking to a guy I just met on LinkedIn, Eddie Dunn, and he has this program called Civilian Ready, and they're actually working with veterans before they leave the military. And so what you just said, what is the major gap that when you leave the military and you're trying to enter the workforce, what are 2 or 3 of the biggest hurdles that you faced and other veterans face?
Well, one is the fact that we go through a boot camp process to indoctrinate us to be able to do what we do in the military.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're done, you just leave. There's no
There's no exit. Right.
there's no deprogramming. And so what we come to find serving in the military is that we're with a tribe. We have our own tribe of family members that we watch out for. They watch out for us. And then when we exit the military, we're just kind of off in our own little isolated islands. So there's a lot of isolation that is involved with that process. For me personally, there was a lot of distrust. So there were things I found out about the world, you know, being overseas, being in support of the Iraq War, things I found out that were that made me distrust large organizations even more. So whether it's the government or big business or the media, those things almost all came way notched down after my time in the service. So it was, try to figure out who I needed a new tribe. I needed to rebuild some of that trust so that I could, forge a new path forward. So I think those are the main ones, but also the healing that has to happen. There's a thing that I learned called moral injury that turns out to be, I think, one of the biggest things that veterans deal with when they come back. I just want to read you the definition of what a moral injury is. So moral injury is the damage done to one's conscience or moral compass when that person perpetrates, witnesses, or fails to prevent and acts that transgress their own moral or ethical values or codes of conduct. So we were all raised the same way, not to kill, right? Not to cheat, not to lie. And there's certain realities of war that we have to be able to do those things sometimes, or we witness or support people doing some of those things. So there is PTSD when people come back from serving in the military, and PTSD is rampant in all of our communities, but there's also this thing called moral injury, which is different. And that connects us to the values that we were raised with and that our communities are, it's sort of understood in the fabric of our community and our church life and our spiritual life. So those things get really challenged when you're coming back from the military.
I've never heard that before, and it made me think a lot about it. And what do you see as kind of the difference between PTSD and moral injury? And you talked about it a little bit, but I think some of the things you see can also create that PTSD. Like, what's the line between the two? Does it have like a chemical or physical effect on the brain?
I mean, the symptoms can be very similar.
Yeah.
So they can get really confused and combined in a way. But, the way I look at it is that the moral injury is more of that's a moral ethical component that has to do with our spirit, where I think PTSD is often more the, some single event that happened
or multiple, right?
Or multiple. Yep. You can have PTSD and moral injury inside of one experience or one event. But because you have PTSD doesn't mean you have moral injury, and because you have moral injury doesn't mean you have PTSD. So it's just the newest, I think, hidden wound that we understand is happening in the context of military service and also not just military service. So if you think about COVID and what we went through as a nation there, I think there's a lot of moral injury that people are going to be dealing with around there. So some people were forced to take vaccines to keep their job, or to follow, shut their business down during that whole thing. Right. So there are things that were perpetrated against people in our community that we could not stop, or that we were unable to or unwilling to stand up and say something about. So that's just another way to think about that. This isn't just in war. This is in our communities. And I think COVID is one example of that.
Yeah, and I can even see it happening in business, right? You have a culture, you have a way things are being done, and oftentimes, not oftentimes, at times, leaders go against their own values, and sometimes unintentionally things happen. But there's also just bad intent that you can see, and it can cause a lot of confusion in people, and it can mess you up. Not at that same level, but I agree, it just creates that distrust. And I can tell you in relationships and business, like as soon as trust is gone, it's like you might as when that's gone, everything else is out the window. And so when that's broken, I can see that how that could really affect people. And what kind of treatment are you seeing for that, and that's working?
So when I was running the nonprofit, we were using it's called EMDR, and that's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And what's fascinating about it, and why I really jumped feet forward into that, was that it's the body's own healing mechanism. So when you go to sleep at night, you'll eventually get into this REM sleep, rapid eye movement, and your eyes will be going back and forth and back and forth. And what's happening is that it's processing the day's events that you had and processing that, making meaning out of it, and incorporating that into who you are. So EMDR is actually using lights or sound to create this movement between left and right, just like in REM sleep, to process those events that occurred that were never properly processed. And that's why it's sort of like they're just a wide open, creating problems and emotional dysregulation, nightmares. There's all these different things that's happening. So it's actually tapping into our body's native healing mechanism, which is why I love this so much, and why I encourage other people to check it out. Now, nothing works for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So the healing path is really an individual journey, and but I suggest people that do have things that they need to be addressed to check out EMDR. And there are other therapies that people use, but some of them are more passive. It's a talk therapy.
Right.
There may be no end in sight with, well, when am I healed from this thing? Whereas in EMDR, you can actually get resolution and no longer be registering as having PTSD after just a few sessions. So there's a lot of hope with, and then there's, of course, there's others. I encourage people to look. Like there's now, brand new methodologies that use whether it's microdosing with MDMA or these other alternative modalities. There's a ton of really promising treatments that are out there. You just got to get on the path and decide that I'm not going to stop until I receive some healing and I make some progress.
Yeah, I'm not a talk therapy guy. It's like, oh, I've got something that's going to change your life. Oh, we're out of time. I'll see you next week. So, be sure to settle your bill on the way out. But anyway,
and if I can also just make a quick statement about, you'd stated that it was nothing like military service. So there's one thing we can't do, and we can't compare people's trauma. Trauma is trauma.
Yeah.
And it's real, and it's the most important thing in that person's life. And it doesn't matter where it came from. If it's from a car crash, from a parent, from war, from wherever, the effects are the same, and they can be devastating. And it's amazing how many times this comes up talking about entrepreneurship, right?
Great correction. I always tell people, like, your problems are real to you, right? You can't say, well, at least I didn't do that. Your problem is based on your life experience and your interpretation of that. And as we're talking about the testing, the failing, the learning and growing. So what was the first test that you made as you launched this?
Yeah. So I just set up LLC as Shadow Culture. And I did a real quick accelerator program. It was like 7 weeks with the University of Minnesota and Bunker Labs. And so I used that opportunity to just get some feedback on my approach, which really was called veteran cultural competence. And I was going to go into organizations that hire veterans, like Best Buy. Minnesota here, we have a lot of Fortune 500 companies that are, they're trying to do the right thing. We have this veteran hiring initiative. So companies like Best Buy, Target, or even on the private side, Cargo. And then I was, was trying to make inroads on how do you sell to a Fortune 500 company, a program that no one's ever heard of before, and is also a new take on diversity and inclusion. So that's where I started.
And it's tough when you're selling into those Fortune 500s. I've done it before, also into the healthcare systems. It's either a priority or it isn't. And they do get sometimes a bad rap, like, oh, you're saying you want to help veterans, but also there's just priorities. Like, they do have the right intent to do it, but how much focus can they get it? Is the budget, does it fizzle out? So that's a big target to swing at. No pun intended, the target Fortune 500 company that are in this. Come on, I'm trying to lighten it up a little bit. But picking them as your initial ICP, you had to go into it thinking, or excuse me, maybe you didn't, that's going to be a long sales cycle and everyone and the brothers trying to sell everything they have to those big companies. So it's a big target to swing at. How did that work out for you?
It was ambitious, and I thought about it like I only needed one to do a pilot program for me to, get the proof of concept that this works. But I was coming from the nonprofit world and didn't have any experience selling into those organizations, or didn't have really strong networks into them in general. So I kind of went a route that focused on ERGs, and so employee resource groups for military, but there are no paid positions with those. So they're all volunteers, employees in the organization themselves. So I think that route wasn't fruitful. And I spent too much time working on, so what I was hoping to do was also, I love telling veteran stories. I love interviewing vets. I've done over 100 of them, and I like making those into podcasts. So I made a pilot podcast episode that I was also shopping around, and I actually went through the whole marketing of, designing the CD and the case that had some of the diversity and inclusion programs I was offering. And I was trying to make a unique approach to these executives through this physical product that I could deliver to them, and then send a short video message to help book meetings. But that definitely did not work. I did get some meetings, but I wasn't able to convert that into the next step of, a sales meeting or some progress into the initiative.
So now that you've been working with the House of Bricks and getting a lot of entrepreneurship advice and watching us fail also. So Paul will attest that I try this every day, test, fail, learn, and grow to my own demise. And what would you do differently now after these 12 months? Who would your ICP be?
Well, if I stick with the same one, I would definitely I would find a partner that is working in that space or has done that before. I don't know if because the entire time I was looking for a partner. And so the other thing that I would do would simply be joining a community and getting a mentor or an advisor, because I was just flying solo and spun my wheels and wasted so much time and energy. So it would probably be a combination of those two things. Someone that knows the space that I'm entering in, or someone that can just be an advisor to the company and check in with them on, here's where I'm at, here's where I'm struggling. That would have been a game changer.
And I'll just go ahead and give you advice on how I would do it, because I'll be your advisor today. I would talk to small, medium, and large companies, right? And find my MVC, right? Minimum viable customer. You get it out
100%.
there, you talk to some people, and you have to balance, okay, do small companies even have an interest in this? Is it medium-sized companies, big companies? What are the sales cycles in doing that? And I agree, getting in a community, getting feedback, and doing that would definitely help give that, let you know who it's going to resonate with. Because I remember when we talked and I looked into shadow culture, it's a great product. It's a great problem you're solving. The key is finding who could actually take action. Excuse me, I'm a little sick. So take action in the time that you need it, right? It's not that Target didn't need it. It's not these Fortune 500s didn't need it. It's just you didn't have the runway of cash and the entryways and to get into those big companies. So from that process, you were able to learn. What did you feel as was the major lesson that you took away, other than partnership?
Yeah, it would be focusing on an MVC.
Yep.
And selling first and building second. I learned so much doing that veteran resilience project that I was kind of stuck on the idea that I didn't want all that knowledge and experience to go to waste, which is bullshit, because that's not worth, the opportunity that I had with shadow culture to find exactly what those companies needed and deliver that. So I wasn't flexible enough. I could have gone into an organization in a very short time, get to know the team that's on board, the veterans that are working inside that organization, and find out, if there was a problem there, and what they thought about it, what their teammates thought about it, and build something or design a program that is specifically for what they needed instead of what I thought they needed.
Right. Yeah, getting that feedback, again, from customers, from prospects, from community members. You can build a great product in your mind and think it's really great, but other people may not agree with it. Could be the timing, could be the market, could be budget, or it's just not the right thing. And so we've talked about testing, we've talked about failing, we talked about learning, and now it's time to grow. So how did you grow and what did you change?
I'm still in the process of growing, because the truth is, at the, about 12 to 18 months in, everything came crashing down, and I'm still building my way out of that. Like my best friend in the whole world unexpectedly died. James Vall, I served overseas with him. And that happened right at around this time. And the exact same time, my wife lost her job when I was basically going to catch the flight to go to the funeral. So everything was just crashing down in 2018. And it's been a process of healing, a process of just taking one step at a time since then. Because I spent a lot of relationship capital. I spent real capital of my own for that project. Spent a lot of time and energy. So I had a good stretch of time that I needed to pay back some of those reserves and give myself space to heal and then learn. And joining with the House of Bricks has been amazing. It's given me the space to actually see what those lessons were and then be able to share them. So that's where I'm at in the growth phase. I think it's still unfolding, and I can see the power of this framework for going through those old experiences and pulling the wisdom out from it, and then not ignoring it like it's it is kind of painful to go back over through your failures, but to be able to process that information and into the learnings and be able to share that, I think is valuable. That's why I love this series. I think it's great to get entrepreneurs to dive into some of those lessons for all of us that we can learn from.
I always tell people, if you're going to go into your past with a purpose. And
Right.
not a lot of people do that. It's regret, it's guilt, it's shame. And those things are heavy. And we talk about those experiences in life. Those are heavy bricks you're carrying. But you can go into your past, and if you have a purpose and you go through this test, fail, learn, grow process, then you're going to come out of it with those learnings and the opportunity to grow. And I've seen you grow a lot over these last 12 months. And I just want to give everyone, credit where credit is due. The name of this show and this model came from Paul, and he called me about the test, fail, learn, grow idea and combining it with our community call. And I said, that's a terrible idea. I don't know what you're talking about. And then 2 weeks later, I called him back with that idea, and I thought it was mine, typical leadership style. But we would not be here today doing what we're doing without Paul. If you're not connected with him on LinkedIn, definitely do. I know he's starting to write more of his story, his experience, and it's really, powerful impact and how, God brings people together. And Paul's been a great friend, great team member. And as you've gone through this process, Paul, like what do you see as your biggest takeaway from the test, fail, learn, grow process, and how are you applying it here in the House of Bricks?
Let's see. I would say, so the thing about what I was trying to do, and I've done this in many different instances, I was trying to take on a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
Or I wasn't trying to sell an app that makes, you get something quicker, just a little bit quicker. It was something that I really felt was needed. And so I poured myself into it, into the nonprofit, into helping veterans. I burnt out because of it. Then I shifted that to the private sector. I mean, I went toe to toe with the VA over this thing. Actually won, but at what cost? So one of my takeaways for people who are also taking on big problems and that have some social component to it, some like sense that we need to do this, we need to support, we need like ending veteran homelessness. That's a great one. And there's a lot of causes like this, but don't lose yourself in the cause. Don't let that cause bring you down as well, because it can. Like, you can burn out, you can take on too much by taking on huge causes that you can move the needle, but you have to be, I think, a little cautious with what you think you can accomplish, especially by yourself. So get yourself some people to run with, some mentors and advisors to shorten that time period in the struggle zone. I mean, it really makes a big difference. So I just caution people I want people to take on big problems, but get a tribe together to do it with and take care of yourself in the process.
Yeah, and you watched me do it over the summer in the last 6 months. Why didn't you say something? We wanted to help startups, and 9 out of 10 fail, and we took it head on. And it's my passion, it's my purpose. It became my profession, but it's a very, very difficult problem to solve. So high performers, high achievers, big problem solvers, we want to take on the world, but what's that saying? How do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time. You can have a big problem that you want to solve, but you have to break it into micro problems and make decisions, small decisions, right? Creates action, action creates feedback, and then you can make better decisions down the road. So even if your target is to end veteran homelessness, this gets back to our simple framework, the strategy. I'm here now, I want to solve veteran homelessness, but I'm not going to get there by ending it on the first step. And so what's the first thing? These micro steps help, and micro problems will help you not skip the struggle zone, but definitely optimize it and make data-driven decisions. And so I like what you said, not to let your mission take you down, and you can still solve big problems, but breaking it into micro problems. So what's one action step that we can take away from avoiding these same mistakes?
Find a mentor, and it doesn't have to be just one mentor. And it doesn't have to be called a mentor. It could be just someone that you look up to, and that's either in the space that you're in now or has done that in the past, or find a community like that. That'll solve so many issues that a solopreneur or someone just starting out is going to have.
Well, I'm going to wrap up on time because I know you got to move us over for our community call. So if you're not a part of the House of Bricks community or any community, it's okay to be independent, but you don't have to be alone. Get around like-minded people on the same frequency, build together, use a relationship capital flywheel, find a mentor, climb the mountain with someone else, mentor other people. But most importantly, what Paul is talking about is leading yourself. And we talk about relationship capital, focus on some personal capital as well, because you can't pour from an empty cup. And the more you build yourself up with the right mindset, the more you can inspire other people, receive from them, and continue to give more. So Paul, thank you for joining Test, Fail, Learn, Grow. Thank you for coming up with a name. Thank you for coming up with this idea. And thanks for everything you're doing at the House of Bricks to build our community. And most of all, appreciate your friendship.
Thanks, Adam. It's been awesome.
All right. Thank you.